old knife, handle messed up, then it falls off. What do we do? What's up guys, Dan here, Coalcracker. So one of the questions I get quite often when I talk about care and maintenance and repair of knives is, what do I do when I have a knife and the handle breaks and it breaks off, and how do I fix that in the field? So there's a couple things that we need to talk about before I actually show you some methods to do that. One of the things that I would like to talk about is that for all of the survival training I have done and all of the people I've been involved with in survival, it is very rare that a modern knife, that the handles actually crack and break off. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, with a more high quality knife, if you get yourself a good Bushcraft knife, generally the scales on the knives, okay, are pinned or they're screwed on. So for those pins or screws to break away is going to be very tough. But then secondly, those scales are generally glued onto the knife. So even if the scale cracks, okay, the probability that the whole thing is going to fall off is going to be very, very low. Now with older knives, such as this old hickory that I have here, you will find that the handles are very loose, but again, you still have these pins in place. So generally what you're going to notice with it is the handle will be all loose, but the handles don't just fall off with just the pins left inside. They normally need to crack in some locations for the whole scale to fall off in amongst itself. So what I would recommend is, if you have an older knife and you're noticing some cracks in your home, just glue the thing up and you'll be good to go. If you're in the field, just take some bank line or some cordage and wrap the handle nice and tight, and then deal with it when you get back home. They're going to be the best options for you. Now with all that said, what I have noticed very recently is a lot of knives with removable scales. So what they have is the little hex key, okay, screws in them, and you have to tighten them every so often. And I have seen a lot of people coming to classes recently and they are losing those little screws. And if you lose both of those, okay, and if one's loose, the other's probably not far behind, the scale falls off and you don't have screws to replace it. Now you only have scales on one side, or maybe everything falls off. What are you going to do? So one option is just take some paracord or bank line or rope and just rope up the handle and use it as is. So that's going to be a really good option. But what if that's super uncomfortable and you're going to be out for a while? Is there anything more bushcrafty we can do? And yes, there is. So this right here, what I'm holding up, this was just an old blank that I was testing some stuff on at the shop, because honestly, out of all the knives I went through today to try to do this video, none of them had loose or broken handles, or there was no knives I wanted to rip the handles off of. So we're just going to use one of these blanks, pretending that the scales have fallen off or I lost the screws, whatever it may be. So the first thing I would do is go out and I would get myself a piece of wood. Now the wood, okay, in this case needs to be a little bit wider or the same width as my knife handle, and then you can decide how high you want the handle itself. So I'm going to go a little bit above this point right here, and then I'm going to go down almost to this curve. I'm not going to worry too much about curvature of the handle itself, because again, this is a temporary thing. Ultimately, we want to get our handle replaced properly. So I'm going to get myself a piece of wood like this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just split it down the middle. Now with my piece of wood split down the middle, they are going to become the scales of my knife. So pretty cool. It actually looks pretty neat when you actually lay them on here. Like, it looks pretty woodsy. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do now, though, just to make this a little bit maybe fancier, oh no, I'm good, I want to leave my lanyard loop sticking out. Okay, so what I'm going to do now at this point is I'm going to go inside and I'm going to mark where my original pinholes were. Okay, so in this case there's two, so I'm going to mark both sides of this with my pinholes. So I'm just going to use a pencil, because I usually carry a pencil in my haversack anyway, so this is going to give me a nice mark inside there. And if you don't have a pencil, you can always use an awl, and that will work just as well So mark this thing up. Now that my handle's marked, it's time to drill out these holes. So this is where it might become a little bit tricky. If you don't have anything along with you to drill, then that can become somewhat of a problem. So if that's the case, what I recommend if you want a thicker handle on is just use these with a straight lash and lock this thing on the best that you can. At least it gives some thickness to your knife handle and you'll be okay. Otherwise, we're gonna go ahead and drill. So there's a lot of different options for drilling. You can sit with just an awl and work your awl through. A lot of little pocket knives have awls also. This is a gimlet. We sell these gimlets on our website. You can, I know, also get these online. You can drill out with a gimlet. This is like a handheld drill. And then another option, which is actually a pretty cool one. So this is a Speedy Stitch awl. This was my grandfather's. I did a video on this a while ago. These things are made for sewing heavy, thick leather because you can get a good grip on them. But because they have a chuck on them, you can put small drill bits in. So that's what we're going to be using today because I have it along in my haversack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drill from the inside here right to the outside, creating my pinholes. So now my holes are drilled in my handle. Now it's time to find pins. So how do we do that? Well, we're gonna use small sticks for that. All right, so I have a small stick and all I did was I put a small point on it and I'm just gonna start to work this through. And it's gonna get tight as I go through there, and then I'm going to put my other side on and continue that process. Now, because the stick, of course, I started on the small end and it's gonna get thicker and thicker. If I feel like it's too loose as I go along here, all that I need to do is just continue working it through or hammer it through. So it's getting in there and it's getting tight right now. So it's looking pretty good. And then I'm just gonna break that stick loose. So pin 1 is in. Now we're gonna start to work the bottom portion. So this one's definitely way tighter because it's further down on the stick, which is fine, and it's actually starting to come through on that side a little bit. So looking pretty good overall, I think. I'm actually pretty happy with that. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take my pocket knife now and I'm gonna work with this a little bit. So looking nice there, check it out. Really cool. We got pins. And we are good to go. So it gives you an option from just using a blank because some people don't like how that feels in their hand. You can just add that stick on there and now we're gonna be good to go and cut and do some work. And again, you gotta monitor this, right? It's just a field expedient, so monitor it and you should be a happy camper once again. All right, guys, so if you like that video, hit like and subscribe down below. You can also check us out at coalcrackerbushcraft.com for all our classes, our gear, and our blog. Also, be sure to sign up for our email. It's at the bottom of our website. If you just scroll down, sign up. You'll be the first to know all about new stuff happening and new product releases and things like that, especially with the holidays coming up. Lots of new stuff coming out, so definitely do that. And then until the next video, stay in the woods.